Hi, and welcome to episode 59 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Monday the 28th of November 2016. I'm coming to you from the central west of New South Wales in Australia, and I didn't record last week. I had a pretty busy week, but it's fantastic to have your company again and get to share some of the crafting that I've been working on in the past few weeks. I announced in the last episode that I would be doing a drawing for 2 patterns of the winner's choice from Ravelry up to US $7. So I might as well get on with the drawing. I have gotten everyone's names from YouTube and I've printed them off, and I'm going to pop them in my wonderful sockhead hat. So this is possibly my favourite hat. It's been very, very warm in winter, and it was knit with a singles yarn from Atelier Yarn, which was is the yarn shop for Meg Gadsby, the wonderful shawl designer. And I'm not sure if she's dying too much at the moment because she's been very busy putting out shawl patterns, but I love this hat and I love the yarn. So I'm putting the names in the hat. And it's going to be a bit hard to tell if I draw the same person for both the Ravelry and the YouTube threads, but if I do, then I might need to do a redrawing because I think that's only fair to share the love. So the names are in there, shuffling them around, and the winner is Intuit Knit. So if you can get in touch with me and let me know which pattern you would like. And now I have to get these names out of this hat and make a big mess. Okay, the hat is empty, and I will pop the entries from the Ravelry thread because I ended up accidentally commenting in the Ravelry thread, so I thought that it's better to, well, not accidentally, I wanted to respond. But so I'm putting these names in the hat, give them a bit of a shuffle, and the winner from the Ravelry thread is Jellybean, post number 18. So Jellybean and Intuit Knit, if you can get in touch with me and let me know which pattern you would like, up to the value of $7 US from Ravelry, and best to send me a message on Ravelry, because I'm pretty sure that both of you do use Ravelry. So otherwise, you can send me a message on Instagram or something like that. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Just put a comment in YouTube if you are particularly stuck and you can't get a hold of me, and we'll figure it out. Anyway, on with the yarny content. So this week I have a couple of finished objects. The first is a little bit of spinning. So this was some Corriedale that I was given at the National Field Days in Orange about a month ago, and it was just a small amount that a lady who was spinning the Corriedale gave to me as a gift, and I decided to spin it up. It had been washed, but it had a fair amount of lanolin in it, and I was trying to do the long backward draw, and I found it a little bit hard to do. But I persisted, and then I ended up doing a chain ply, so basically a 3-ply, and I think it turned out okay. I've got no idea what I will do with this. I just occasionally like to spin these random little bumps and try it out, in particular just to try out different fibres. So I have spun with Corriedale before. I spun for a hat, and it was a processed sort of fibre, so it was much easier to spin and a much more consistent result than what I've managed with this. So there's definitely some lumpy bumpy bits. There are chunky bits where it's sort of hardly plied at all, sort of in there. There's sort of lumps and bumps, but I might knit it up and just see how it knits up. It has, even though I washed it with a bit of a wool wash kind of thing, it still has a bit of the the sheepy smell to it, which isn't a bad thing. So that was just my little test spin. Not sure I learnt too much from it, but oh, I took some videos. I will pop in some videos of what I did with the fibre. So I think there's some video like as it was given to me. Then once I'd carded it, I just gave it a bit of a rough carding. I didn't properly do it into roll lags, but I think there's some footage of that, and then possibly on the nitty noddy. So you'll get to see what I did with that. But yeah, turned out okay. So I'll pop that video in here. My next finished object are my mum's mittens. So these were knit with some yarn from Rosehip Island, who's down in Tasmania and has a wonderful Rosehip Knits podcast. And it was in her Oz sock base, which is 80% Australian merino, 20% nylon, in the Smarties in the Sea colourway. So this is what they look like. So my mum had asked for some fingerless mittens, and I used some notes that I jotted down to make myself some gloves earlier in the year, and then did some measurements on my mum's fingers to figure out where to put the how long to knit each of the finger nubs. So each of the finger nubs is a little bit different length, and they're customized to her. So I have fairly long finger bones going up to the knuckles, so on my fingers the nubs go a fair bit shorter than what they do on hers, but they're a good length for her. I've been doing some adjustments to the palm to try to get some extra fabric in there to accommodate a larger hand, and I'm fairly happy with how it turned out, but I think I need to just do one more sort of attempt at these mittens before I publish them, just because I didn't do these adjustments on the mittens that I use, and they've been perfectly fine. I've been wearing them all winter when I go out. So I'll have to think about that. I might do a pattern which has sort of the slightly roomier version and then the not so roomy version or something. So it's something that's on the cards to work on in the next few weeks. But these are the mittens, and my mum's very happy with them. I got her to model them for me for the Ravelry photo picture. I think they ended up using about 43 grams, so less than half a skein of yarn, which isn't too bad at all, even though they've got the long cuff, and it means that I've got a fair amount of this yarn left over to knit other things with. So it was a lovely yarn to work with, and I'm happy that I've got a Christmas present done. I knit some Christmas presents earlier in the year, but my sort of Christmas knitting mojo hasn't quite been there, so I have a feeling that I'm going to be skipping out on some of the Christmas knits that sort of were sitting in the back of my mind, but at least my mum is getting some mittens and some socks, and I've got a few other pairs of socks that are going off out into the world. As for my works in progress, I have continued with my knitting a square a week on my sock yarn blanket. So I knit this grey square. I don't know what the yarn is. It was sent to me by a friend, and it was really, really soft and wonderful to work with. It feels like it could be an alpaca blend or something, but it's kind of magical to have all these different types of fibres going on in my blanket. I also knit this square, which, if you remember, I did knit a shawl from this a few months back. It's a skein yarn in a singles base, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but I still haven't got the photos of that shawl put up onto Ravelry, so I should actually sort that out. And that was another pattern that I was planning to publish this year, but things just keep getting in the way, so it might happen at some point. I have also been working on my Taskutakki cardigan. So this is a pattern by Veera Välimäki, and I won't spend too long on this one because it's not too much further than last time, but I have been working on sort of the back portion because it's an interesting construction. So the arm holes are there, and I'm going upside down this way, and that's the back part. So I'm working on the back section at the moment. But what I ended up doing was I used to have this on a circular needle, so one circular went around the entire back portion, so it wasn't possible to really try it on, and I drew the cables through so that I could pop little cable stoppers, and the neighbour's rooster is going off, sorry. I popped some cable stoppers onto the cables so that I'm effectively working with two straight needles, but they're on cables, which means that the whole thing sort of floats apart and I can try it on, and it seems to be fitting okay. I think I need to get a little bit further along to completely judge that. And the rooster is getting closer. It'll be fine, but I think that there might be a little bit of sort of sagging in the armpits, but it's going to be a cozy cardigan, so I definitely want room in it anyway. But my most important project in the last few weeks has been these scrappy socks. So I cast on these about, I think, a week and a half ago maybe, and I wanted to try out the 9-inch circular that I got, and somehow it just kept growing and growing, and then whoops, dropped my yarn, and then the second one's been growing, and it took a little bit of effort to try to get used to my 9-inch circular. At first I cast on with a straight needle and then switched it on to the circular to do the ribbing, and the ribbing was taking forever. I timed myself doing the ribbing on this and the ribbing on my mum's mitten, and it was taking me I think 2 minutes longer on the small circular at first. As I got further into the ribbing, it was taking me a minute longer than on double pointed needles. So I think that I was sort of speeding up, and then as I timed myself just knitting stockinette, after a little while I was getting approximately the same, a little bit longer on the small circular than on the double pointed needles, but I was only timing myself on one round at a time, so I think to get a really accurate idea of which one's faster, I should actually sort of knit 5 rounds or so and see what the timing is. So time wise, I'm possibly still faster on double pointed needles than on these, but I like the way that I can just pick this project up and I don't have to wriggle my double pointed needles anywhere. I can just pick it up and I just start knitting, and it's sort of I've been picking it up and knitting randomly as I've been waiting for the kettle to boil or waiting for the computer to do something. So it's been very handy in that regard. I also found it very handy when I went down to Sydney last week to knit on the train. I've knit on trains and buses with double pointed needles before, and I have a tendency to drop one. On most journeys one will fall, and quite often in between the wall and the seat, so it takes a bit of effort to try to get it out from there. Whereas with this, the needle doesn't drop out. The only thing that can happen is sometimes a stitch falls off the needle and I have to try to pick it up, and it's a little bit trickier with these, so I did have a double pointed needle with me to have on hand just in case I couldn't pick it up easy enough, just because of the circumference of the needle. So I've been enjoying it. I definitely don't think, I'm not sure I would use it to do a pattern sock. I think that it could be a bit too clunky. I did find when I was doing the gusset decreases on this sock that trying to pick up 2 stitches and do knit 2 togethers and slip knits, it was just a little bit fiddly. So yeah, I'm not sure that I would really want to do a patterned sock with it, but for vanilla socks it seems to go well. I'm also not sure that it's ideal for my gauge, because I think that as I knit further along, my gauge actually changed, so there should actually be the same amount of stitches on the leg as on the foot, but there's actually a bit of a difference here. So my gauge seemed to tighten up as I knit along, and it's a little bit snug on the foot. I'm knitting these with 64 stitches, and I find it funny that I used to do 54 stitches on sock weight, on fingering weight, sock weight socks, sock weight yarns, and now I'm up to 64 stitches and I'm ending up with a tight gauge. So I'm not sure whether I should get some 2.5mm needles and try them out, because this is starting to feel a little bit bulletproof. But for these socks, perfectly fine. It's a nice learning experience, and I'm really happy with it. I like it. I did use double pointed needles to do the heel and the heel turn. I wasn't entirely sure how I could do that without switching over to a double pointed needle. I'm sure that there's instructions online, but I just didn't. I was too keen to get onto the next colour and the next colour. And then also, as I got sort of down into the toe, I switched over to double pointed needles as well. And colour wise, Instagram suggested that I should just randomly pick a colour out of my yarn bag. So this bag is full of minis and scraps and what have you, but I wasn't quite feeling brave enough. Having the learning curve of using the short circular was sort of enough pressure that I thought that I wanted to have a bit of control over the colour. So it sort of goes solid, variegated, solid, sort of patterny. So a solid with some kind of multicoloured yarn. Solid has a bit of a what's the word? I was a little bit flexible on what my term of solid was, and some of them are a little bit more tonal than solid, but that was sort of the idea. I was trying to use up scraps, but some scraps I had were fairly long, so I just sort of chopped them off at a length that seemed to suit. But I sort of got down to the foot, and I was on the train, and a lady was chatting to me and telling me her life story for a very long time, and it was lovely. I was knitting away and we're just talking, and she was telling me about swimming with seals in the Caspian Sea and all sorts of amazing adventures that she'd had. And so I wasn't really paying attention to my colours too much on the foot section as I was chatting to her. So there's actually sort of a solid, variegated, solidish and patterned, and they ended up being a little bit too similar to each other, but I will always remember the lady that I was chatting to when I look at that section of my sock. It's pretty amazing that this has actually got so many different yarns in it. It has memories from my own projects, and it has memories from other people's projects, because there's quite a few yarns in here that are from swaps that I've done or that people have sent to me. And there's also quite a few of my favourite yarn dyes in here. There's quite a few Miss Click Clacks, there's some Renanollies, there's some Craftfulness, there's Rosehip Island, and yeah, different people have sent me different parts of the different sections, so I can I can look at these and remember them as well as remembering my projects. So these are going to be very special socks for me. But I am already thinking about casting on the next pair, wondering if I can be brave enough to just randomly select yarn and see what happens. But I don't know then whether I would just... Does it really matter if these go together, or if I just end up having whichever scrappy sock with some other scrappy sock? So I might end up with half a dozen different scrappy socks, and they just sort of randomly get worn in whichever pair I take out of the sock drawer. One downside for the small circular is that I couldn't try it on while I was knitting. I could have put it onto double pointed needles, but just the circumference of that and how little tip there is, I was worried that I would pop off my stitches if I tried to try it on. So that's, I think, if I'd have realised that my gauge was changing so much on the foot, then perhaps I would have increased the stitches. But then I was on the train, so I wasn't really planning to try it on when a lady was talking to me for a few hours. But yeah, I'm really happy with those. They have taken a lot of attention away from other knitting because they're just so much fun. So thank you to everyone who's encouraged me to try out the small circulars, and also encouraging me to knit scrappy socks. So I think that's all that I had to say about those. Yeah, and for anyone who's wondering, I'm a continental knitter, so I think that might make a bit of a difference as to whether or not you enjoy using the small circulars. I've had my little finger sort of floating off in the air while I've been knitting, and I don't know how easy it is to sort of loosen up your grip and just sort of let your fingers fly if you're not a continental knitter, but it's worth a try. I think it's always fun to try something, and if you don't like it, give it another little try another time, and then if you still don't like it, then you can always sell the needle or give it to a friend who might want to try it and sort of share the love of the craft. That's it for all my knitting, but I have quite a few acquisitions. So I ordered these stitch markers from Calico Miss. She used to be Chatton Designs, and these arrived I think shortly after the last podcast, but I've been waiting to show them before I start using them. But I love her stitch markers, and these were sort of a brownish collection, so there's brown beads and then white beads, and they're absolutely beautiful. When I went down to Sydney, I decided to break up my journey. I took a car and then a coach and a train for a few stops, and stopped off in Blackheath, where I went to visit the House of Wool. So it's a yarn shop that I've never been to before, but I had heard of it. And it was a small shop, and they mostly had their own yarns, which was a bit of a surprise to me. I was sort of expecting it to mainly have mass-produced yarns, but it was good to see that they had a lot of their own yarns. So I picked up this, which is 80% merino, 20% nylon, 75% merino, 20% nylon, 5% stellina. And I've never bought sparkly yarn before. I've used a little bit that has been sent to me in my sock yarn blanket, but this is the first sparkly yarn that I've bought. And I bought it because I haven't tried it, and it just somehow, this speaks to me of Christmas. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a sparkle, but I love the colours. I think they're sort of, I don't know, I think they're going to be beautiful. So I'm now in a dilemma, thinking that whether I use these as my Christmas Eve cast on, that the Little Bobbins podcast sort of initiates, or whether because I had been intending to use my Stray Cat Socks self-striping yarn. I've been saving that for the Christmas Eve cast on, but this is kind of cool. So this is the Wallaby Moss and Quarry colourway, and 400 metres for 100 grams. So this is a fingering weight yarn. They also had all sorts of other different weights that they dye up. I had a chat to the lady there who looked after it all, and chatting to her about dyeing and what have you. And they had a lot of very delicate colours. They had a lot of lace weights and things which were delicate, but then some of their sock yarns were a little bit more sort of inventive. No, what's the well, there was more variegation and sort of multicoloured yarns. So that's what I was drawn to. I was also drawn to some fibre. So I'm going to show this, and it's going to crinkle. So I'll mute the sound. So that's a merino and silk blend. I don't know how much merino and silk there is in it. It looks sort of mainly merino with a bit of silk, and looks beautiful, and I look forward to spinning that at some point. I was also chatting with the lady there about spinning classes and things that they have, so it's a bit of a trek to get to from here, but I think depending on the days that they have their classes, I could do it. It just depends on whether it's a day when I can get out of the village and take a bus and then a train, or whether I have to get a car somewhere first, and then it just makes it a bit complicated. But it would be lovely to do a spinning class, because the long backward straw that I've been trying to do, I think it would definitely benefit from somebody watching what I'm doing and giving me some pointers. So I'm not entirely sure yet when I'll spin up that particular fibre, but it looks like it would be lovely for a shawl, so I think I'll do it as a short forward draw anyway, and do a worsted spin. I also have picked up a few other things. So I went to Sydney last week. It's been a bit of a blur, but I spent, I think, 22 hours in Sydney, and a lot of that was sleeping and running around going to a meeting and various things. So I didn't have a lot of time. Next time I will definitely make sure that I stay in Sydney for a few days longer, but a little bit of time was good enough. It made me feel homesick for Sydney, but then I also felt homesick for here, so I'm going to be torn for a little while. But I went to Daiso. It's a Japanese shop where pretty much everything is $2.80. So they had a few fun things. So I picked up this. So this is a little needle felting kit to make a little penguin. It's just got some fibre in it, and I'm not sure how much. I don't think there really is instructions. I think you just have to follow the picture and sort of figure it out. But so with that, I also bought this little foam board, and then it's got one of the needle felting things. So this was $2.80. They also had another set of I think they had 4 different needles in it for $2.80, but I'll sort of see how I go with one, see if I like it. I've never tried needle felting before, but I've seen it on other podcasts, and I definitely like the look of things. I'm sure mine's gonna turn out to be a penguin with like 3 heads or something, but it's gonna be fun trying. I think that's it for all the crafty sort of purchasey things, so the rest is just going to be a bit of chatter. But while I was in Sydney, I also went into Muji. I was trying to find a pair of scissors, because my mum's pinched my little Muji scissors that I got in I don't know where I got them from. Might have been Hong Kong or London, but they're just a little set of Muji scissors with a little white sort of cover, and they fit perfectly in my Notions pouch, but they didn't have those, so that was a bit sad, because I love Muji. Muji's an awesome shop. And then to continue with the Japanese theme, while I'm in Sydney, I went to Uniqlo, and they happen to have this shirt. So this is a Jean-Michel Basquiat shirt, and it's got a crown on it, and it's Jean-Michel Basquiat's art is the reason why Give Me a Crown has the name, pretty much. He's an artist from who was sort of big in New York in the 80s, and I was introduced to him by an art teacher when I was probably 15, and absolutely loved his work and fascinated by it. But he drew a lot of crowns on his artworks, and so whenever possible I gravitate towards bits of Jean-Michel Basquiat's art. So I've got quite a few books and some mugs and various things. And yeah, I sort of had been looking at Uniqlo's website and saw that they were having a Jean-Michel Basquiat collection, and had to go and pick one of these up. I didn't realise that they would have this particular shirt with such a big crown. I got another one as well which has got a smaller crown on it, but had to pick it up. And yeah, so it's a bit of giving myself a bit of a crown, because the other aspect of Give Me a Crown is just the idea of being able to feel special and feel proud of yourself and feel happy. So definitely feeling happy with my purchase, because we're all special and we all deserve to be treated to nice things. What else? In Sydney I got to have some Thai food, then got to have some Vietnamese paper rolls, things that and some what are they called? Emperor's puffs, some little Chinese puff things with cream in them. So I was definitely on a bit of a binge of getting things that I can't get out here in the countryside. But yeah, it was a little bit sad to be in Sydney and then have to go again. But it's a choice that I've made to live in the countryside for a little while, and I'll definitely next time I'll spend a few more days in Sydney rather than sort of go in, be a bit sort of flustered from all the travelling, and then have to pretty much hop back on the train to come back again. But the train is good fun. I got to do a lot of knitting and got my socks well underway. Apart from that, I have eaten the beetroots from my garden that I had planted back in sort of in autumn. They were starting to sprout a bit, so I figured that it was time to pull them out. Some of them were sort of fairly good size, maybe an inch and a half. Some of them were really, really tiny, but I ate them. They tasted good. And since then, yesterday the neighbour had a small digger that he had rented for the weekend, so we dug me a veggie patch. It's a little bit of a random veggie patch, but I managed to put some seeds in, transplanted a few things, went to the local markets that are on quarterly yesterday and picked up some strawberries and sort of popped them in, and sort of see if I end up with a proper veggie patch at some point. But I think it'll take a little bit of time for things to start sprouting. I'm not sure if they're going to be happy with the soil or what how I set them up, but we'll see. Might end up with some proper beetroots now that they've got a bit more room rather than just being grown in little pots. I'm rambling, but yeah, it's been a couple of weeks and it's been crazy busy, but that's good. But I should be back again next week. So I would like to thank you for watching. Thank you for all the comments on YouTube and in the Ravelry group after the last episode. And congratulations again to the winners. Get in touch with me. And if you want to come and chatter in the Ravelry group, feel free to. You can just find it by searching for Give Me a Crown. And you can follow me on Instagram if you want to see what I'm up to during the week. But otherwise, I will see you next week. I hope that you're getting lots of crafting done, and hopefully you're counting down to some holidays at the end of December. So I will see you soon.